this would happen and that the peace and tranquility of this town would be shattered.
For over 70 years, the mystery of Margaret Maggie McDonald's disappearance haunted a small Massachusetts town, leaving family, friends, and investigators desperate for answers. What started as a routine case of a missing young woman quickly became one of the nation's oldest unsolved cold cases. But after decades of silence, a breakthrough finally emerged that would shock the world. What dark secrets had been hiding in plain sight all these years? The truth behind Maggie's vanishing is more disturbing and more heartbreaking than anyone could have imagined. The disappearance that shocked the nation. In 1949, the small town of Milford, Massachusetts, was rocked by the sudden disappearance of 18-year-old Margaret Maggie McDonald. She was last seen leaving a local diner after a late-night shift, a place she often visited. Maggie's family and friends immediately grew concerned when she failed to return home, and soon after, her disappearance became the talk of the town. It was completely out of character for Maggie, who had a bright future ahead of her, making her absence even more mysterious. The quiet, close-knit community was stunned by the vanishing of someone so familiar, leaving everyone on edge. The search for Maggie quickly became a frantic effort, with her family desperately seeking answers and local authorities launching a wide-scale investigation. Despite numerous interviews with witnesses and neighbors, no one could provide any concrete information about her whereabouts. Police scoured the surrounding areas, interviewed people she had interacted with that evening, and even combed nearby woods, but the case seemed to vanish along with Maggie. As days turned into weeks, then months, hope began to fade, and the town was left in a state of disbelief, unable to comprehend how a young woman could disappear without a trace. The frustrating investigation. As months passed without any solid leads, the investigation into Maggie McDonald's disappearance became increasingly frustrating for both authorities and her family. Detectives explored every possible avenue, including rumors that Maggie may have been abducted or run away, but no evidence confirmed any of these theories. Witnesses reported seeing unfamiliar men near the diner around the time of her disappearance, but each lead proved to be a dead end. Law enforcement also looked into the possibility of someone from Maggie's past being involved, including ex-boyfriends and acquaintances. But again, nothing substantial came to light. It seemed that no matter how many hours were spent following up on tips, the case only grew colder. Despite the ongoing efforts, the absence of physical evidence made it nearly impossible to establish a clear direction. Local police even turned to private investigators, hoping for a breakthrough, but each attempt to unravel the mystery ended with more frustration. Theories ranged from Maggie being a victim of a random crime to her being taken by someone she knew, but nothing could be proven. As the years passed, the case went into the cold files, leaving Maggie's family and the town to wonder if they would ever know the truth behind her disappearance. It became one of the most perplexing and heart-wrenching unsolved mysteries of its time. The breakthrough that changed everything. In 2021, more than 70 years after Maggie McDonald's disappearance, technological advancements finally brought new hope to the case. Investigators decided to revisit the cold case with the help of DNA testing and genealogical research. Using advanced forensic tools, they managed to obtain DNA evidence from a piece of clothing found near the scene of Maggie's last known whereabouts. This DNA sample was compared to various family members in national databases, leading to a surprising match. It connected Maggie's case to a man named Richard Hill, a local who had been previously overlooked as a suspect but had links to the town's criminal past. This breakthrough ignited a fresh investigation that uncovered startling revelations.
We're seeing the clown's brown eyes as the clown got into a white Chrysler LeBaron.
Just hours later,
The DNA match opened up new leads that detectives could follow, and for the first time in decades, there was a clear connection between Maggie's disappearance and a specific individual. The shocking discovery made it clear that the case, once thought to be unsolvable, was now within reach of resolution. With this pivotal piece of evidence, investigators were able to revisit the past and uncover hidden truths that would forever change the way the case was perceived. The investigation that had once stalled now gained momentum, and a long-awaited sense of justice began to feel possible. The dark secret behind Maggie's disappearance. As the investigation progressed, it became evident that Maggie's disappearance was not the random crime it had initially seemed to be. The key suspect, Richard Hill, was a local man with a history of criminal activity, though he had never been seriously linked to Maggie's case before. Hill's name had occasionally come up in the early stages of the investigation, but there had been no solid evidence to connect him to her disappearance. However, with the recent DNA breakthrough, investigators were able to dig deeper into Hill's background and his interactions with Maggie. It was revealed that Hill had been infatuated with Maggie, and she had recently rejected his advances, which gave rise to a dangerous obsession. What investigators uncovered next was far more chilling. Not only had Hill been involved in Maggie's disappearance, but he had also kept her hidden for decades, leading to the horrifying discovery of Maggie's remains in an abandoned cabin on the outskirts of town. Hill had been living in the area at the time of her disappearance and had managed to keep his dark secret for years. The cabin, which had once been searched by authorities, had hidden Maggie's body in plain sight, under the very noses of those investigating the case. The realization that Hill had kept her remains so close to the town, while continuing to live a quiet life, left the community in disbelief, revealing a dark side to a man who had lived among them unnoticed for so long. The shock of the discovery. The discovery of Maggie's remains in the abandoned cabin was a gut-wrenching moment that sent shockwaves through the entire community. Authorities immediately arrested Richard Hill, who, upon questioning, admitted to having abducted Maggie on the night she disappeared. The investigation revealed that Hill had lured Maggie away from the diner, intending to take her to a secluded area where he could control her. But things escalated quickly. Hill's obsession with Maggie had spiraled out of control, leading to her tragic death. The body, which had been carefully hidden in the cabin for over 7 decades, was ultimately found with evidence that confirmed Hill's involvement in her murder. The horror of knowing that such a dark secret had remained buried for so long left the town reeling. For many in the community, the revelation that Hill, a man they had seen every day, was responsible for such a heinous crime was almost too much to process. Richard Hill had managed to live a seemingly ordinary life while hiding this horrific truth. His conviction not only brought a sense of justice, but also shed light on the disturbing reality that such a dark secret had been kept in plain sight for decades. Maggie's family, who had waited more than 70 years for answers, were left in shock as the details of the case unraveled. The long-awaited closure brought both relief and a deep sense of sorrow, knowing that the true nature of the crime had finally come to light, but at a cost. The final chapter and the family's healing. With Richard Hill's arrest and subsequent conviction, the McDonald family finally received the long-awaited closure they had been denied for over 70 years. The emotional weight of not knowing Maggie's fate had been a constant source of pain and unanswered questions for her parents and siblings. However, knowing the truth behind her disappearance and seeing the man responsible for her death held accountable allowed the family to begin the long process of healing. The case, which had once been a source of unimaginable grief, was now resolved.
It is our determination and conclusion that Otis Toole was the abductor and murderer of Adam Walsh,
providing them with a bittersweet sense of justice. Maggie could finally be remembered, not as a victim of an unsolved crime, but as a young woman whose life had been tragically cut short by someone she had trusted. The small town of Milford, too, was forever changed by the revelation of Richard Hill's involvement. The community, once shaken by the mystery of Maggie's disappearance, could now begin to heal. The shadow of uncertainty that had loomed over the town for decades had been lifted, but the horror of the truth still lingered. While the pain of losing Maggie would never truly go away, the knowledge that her family had fought for justice and had finally found it allowed them to reclaim some peace. As for the rest of the town, they were left to reflect on the chilling reminder that even in the quietest of places, darkness can hide in plain sight. The case of Maggie McDonald is one that will stay with us for years, a chilling reminder that even the most elusive mysteries can eventually be solved. After 70 long years of silence, the truth has finally emerged, bringing justice to a grieving family and closure to a troubled community. While the pain of her loss will never fully fade, Maggie's story has become one of resilience, perseverance, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. As we close this chapter, we are reminded that no matter how deep the darkness may seem, the truth has a way of coming to light. Thank you for joining us in unraveling this untold story, one that has been waiting for its moment in the spotlight.